Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's very good to see you all. Can you all hear me in the chat? Can you all let me know if you can hear me? Wonderful. Good. So, hello, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Del Spafford. I'm the Regional Teacher Trainer and Academic Consultant for Macmillan Education. I'm based in Bangkok. Let me know in the chat, where are you from? Where are you? So I can see people from Cambodia, Thailand. Let me know, the Philippines, yes. I've got people from China. Garth, I think I know you, Garth, right? Our old friend Garth's in. Good, nice to see you, Garth. Good man. I'm looking forward to being able to see you face to face as well. We got the Philippines, Cambodia. I hope everything's going okay. Vietnam. You will also see I'm joined here with John. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi Del, how's it going, mate? Are you okay?
Doing great, thank you.
Well, that looks very refreshing cup of something there.
That's actually my it's my throat. What do you call it? Lubricant. My real drink is right here.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like you might be doing some singing today or something with that kind of drink.
I did a lot of talking yesterday, so I need to keep things well lubricated. Otherwise, I'll start to be a bit croaky.
Okay, great. Oh yeah, you asked me a question. So yes, my name is John. Yeah, I work with Del. Del's in our Bangkok office there. I work out of Shanghai, working for Macmillan Education, and I'm joined to my left there, somewhere hiding in the office nearby. We have Super. Who are you, Super?
Yes, we've never met you before, Super. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello. It's my pleasure to join John and Del today for the session. I am the teacher trainer and academic consultant for Greater China for Macmillan Education. So probably many teachers in Southeast Asia it is the first time for us to see each other. And there are many friends from China. They're saying hi to me. Yeah, I'm your old friend. So glad to see you today.
Great. And Super, what are you drinking?
I have pu'er tea today from Yunnan, China. Have you heard of it?
Never heard of it.
It's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. John, what are you on?
So I am drinking in my limited edition Macmillan Alice in Wonderland 150 years mug.
Wow.
A cup of green tea also. What about you, Del? So you've got your healthy throat drink on one side, and what is in there?
In here, in my Macmillan Education, with the lovely quote on here. Whoopsie daisies, wrong camera. This is actually I don't know the pronunciation, to be honest, but it's rooibos. Is that the correct pronunciation? Rooibos.
So
yeah, it's red bush tea. I think that's what. And I, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's from South Africa, but I'm not really sure.
Well, you can ask Garth. You can ask Garth if your pronunciation is correct. Garth is from South Africa.
There we go. Thank you, Garth. Yeah, and is it from South Africa, Garth? Excellent. Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Right, yeah. It sure is. But I'd rather have some biltong. I know that's from South Africa as well, and much better with biltong. Hi, Toto. How are you?
Or a castle lager, maybe.
Yeah. Anything as long as we win the rugby series. But anyway, well, let's move on from that. So, welcome everybody to today's ELTea time with Macmillan Education, with our trainers here. Today we're going to be talking about assessment, and let me just put up the agenda for today, just to give you a quick look at our agenda. So let me just fire that up. You see the agenda okay? Just like John, Super, can you see that okay? I can't see myself.
loading.
Yes.
It's loading.
Lovely.
Yes.
Okay, great. So so today we're talking all about assessment. So our crack team of Super and John have been looking at these questions. I will be the moderator, so I'll be trying to rein them in because it is such a huge area, which I'm sure most of you will know something about it. So today we're going to try and answer these questions that have been given to us previous to our session today. So without further ado, are you two ready? Are you two all prepared and ready to go?
Absolutely.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Well, without further ado,
very excited.
Let's start with the first question of what is assessment. And Super, seeing as you are the newbie, you can go first. So, what is assessment?
Okay, so for me, I think assessment is one of the most important but very challenging part of education, of the jobs we do. Because we are teachers or trainers, we teach and we train, but it's always challenging to assess because we're trying to measure the knowledge, the skills, sometimes the attitudes, the beliefs our students have learned, and also will reflect on what we teach. So it's a kind of way to measure and reflect on our teaching approaches. So that is my understanding of assessment, and it's a very complicated and ongoing process of doing assessment.
Okay. And
What about John?
and John, would you agree?
Yeah, I know it's such a great question, and thanks to some of our teachers as well. I think a lot of the teachers were very honest, and they said, "Oh, can we go back and revisit assessment? Actually, what is assessment? I'm not quite sure." So we've got teacher Cherry from the University of Education in Myanmar, Yangon, Mint Miat from Hapan University in Myanmar as well, asked this question as well. And actually, it's really good to go back, isn't it, and reflect on this. And for me, assessment, and we'll come on to maybe the difference between assessment and testing a little bit later. But for me, assessment is a broader umbrella term and more to do with the process or the procedures, mainly about collecting information about our learners' progress and development. Which kind of provides the information for sort of ongoing, constant sort of feedback and an improvement of teaching and learning. And with assessment, with this information, we can help kind of modify our teaching and our learning. So for me, a bigger umbrella. And I don't want to give away too many things, but I think testing will come as one kind of tool under that bigger umbrella of assessment.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so I think I would definitely agree with both of what you've said, and I think there's obviously lots of definitions, aren't there, of what assessment is, depending on context, depending on what levels you're teaching as well. Obviously, assessment when it comes to IELTS would be different to what you're doing in kindergarten and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a very, very broad term. And I'll be dipping into the chat box. So any of these questions in the chat, if you want to let us know what you think, then please do. So let's go back to you and let's personalize this a little bit now and find out your experience of assessment. So John, would you like to start with telling us about your experience of maybe being assessed, testing at school, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I also want to sort of talk a little bit about sort of modern day experience as well. And I've been lucky enough to travel around and work in different countries, particularly in government school systems and in public schools. So I was working quite a lot in Malaysia, had some work in Japan as well, Sri Lanka, Nepal. So that was really nice getting a first-hand experience of how they assess in the public, the government school sector as well. And I guess it kind of reflects the way I was assessed maybe growing up as well. Often it would be, a test at the end of the year. Yeah, you might have some coursework, some project work, or maybe sometimes a portfolio going on sometimes. But usually it was at the end of it would be more kind of testing, wouldn't it be, at the end of the year or something like that. And And it's quite similar, I would say, in these kind of countries as well. A focus on the test. But what I would say, there is a shift now. So in Japan, they are now, and Malaysia, for example, they're aligning more to the CEFR. So all the tasks they design, the lessons, will be aligned to, for example, the CEFR, which gives them like a better kind of snapshot of kind of the individual skills and how well they're doing against those CFR can-do statements. So I think things are shifting a little bit, and particularly more towards the individual learner.
Just to interrupt, so you mentioned the CFR. Is that something that was used in your own education, maybe after school, or is it just something that you've learned about?
No, not at all. It's probably something that I've learned about working for a publisher, right? So most publishers now will align their course books to the CEFR. So, for example, each unit, even each lesson will have like a can-do statement. Each unit will maybe have a list of, 5 or 6 can-dos, like sub-skills that they need to do by the end of a unit.
I was just interested whether that has come up in your own personal experience, and maybe it's come after, I guess, and maybe it's more for. I know it's not just for English, but I know that you've studied other languages, and I was wondering whether it's been used in other languages that you've studied as well.
No, I'm studying Chinese, but they don't have a CEFR system for Chinese. Yeah.
So super. Tell us a bit about your own personal experience then of the assessment, maybe teaching or from studying.
Okay, sure. So as an Asian student, like most teachers do, we grow up with exams or tests. So the most experience with assessment in my school life is like exams or tests. So basically like unit test, the middle of term test, end of term test. And there are so many tests in my school life. It's always very stressful and very high stake because we will be ranked based on the scores we have for the exams. And usually we get used to the way how we are tested. So we learn for the tests. So it's quite like a exam oriented learning or test oriented learning. Yeah, sometimes it can be good, but sometimes it's quite it has negative influences on our learning, on the things we learn as well. So it is basically the experience of my school life of assessment. Yeah, maybe some teachers in China will have the same feeling like me.
So a very stressful situation. Yeah, I think that's generally the key, isn't it? But I think maybe we're talking about end of term assessment, the summative assessment, rather than what somebody had mentioned in the chat. Let me just see if I can scroll up, the assessment for learning, which was mentioned by Kitty Pong, which I think is more of the formative side. But we're going to come to that, I believe, as we go through the session. So did you ever, just as a something that's come up, do you ever look forward to a test or to an assessment? Have you got any experience of that?
Yeah.
John? Yeah.
Tell us. So I learned Latin at school.
Oh my.
So every Friday we would have a Latin vocabulary test. So it would be a direct translation. So the teacher would read out the word in English and we'd have to write down in Latin. And it was really good because it was quite competitive and motivating. So I think it brought out my competitive side. But
okay.
Yeah. Right. But apart from that, no, I don't really. No, I hated tests. I much prefer ongoing assessment. Have more opportunities to be assessed in different ways, I think.
And Super, did you ever look forward to a test?
So later, I became an IELTS teacher. I actually teach my students how to take IELTS exams, and I get quite how do I say, experienced in preparing for IELTS and preparing my students for IELTS. And then I look forward to take the exam again to see how much I have improved. So the result was good. So it's kind of good experience.
It's nice. That's sort of like doing like a pre and a post test of the same test, right? And seeing, your development. That's really nice. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, it's just an interesting way. I'm trying to think. The only assessment I've looked forward to, is a formative assessment where I've spent a lot of time on something, and I'm looking forward to getting the feedback from somebody about it. And I think when I was thinking about that, it kind of goes back to when you were a kid, and say if you do a painting or something at school and you look forward to bringing it home to give to your parents because they're going to give you feedback, right? But then that kind of gets knocked out of you, and then it just becomes getting a good score. But anyway, I digress. So the next thing we're going to look at on our agenda, there's been some terms thrown around: testing, assessment, formative, assessment for learning. So I'd just like to try and there's things going into the chat box: formative, illuminative, summative. So these terms that have been thrown out. Let's just have a look at the two main terms that we've looked at, which is testing or assessment. What is the difference? And maybe you can look at those terms as well, and maybe clarify them for our lovely teachers out there.
Cool. All right. Do you want me to have a go, Super?
Yeah, you can have a go.
I think I mentioned a little bit already about assessment being like a broader umbrella about the procedures. I think testing is one tool that would fall under assessment, so one type of assessment. But I see testing as more of a product, maybe like an end product, that maybe focuses on collecting data or scores from students at a specific point in time. And I would say it's usually against some kind of benchmark, or even against other students potentially as well, or usually. What say you? Super? Agree or disagree?
Agree, totally agree. So test is like one format of assessment, and I think test is belongs to like a summative assessment. On the other hand, we have formative assessment, as teachers have mentioned in chat box. So the timing would be different. So summative assessment happens at the end of a unit, or end of a course, end of a module. But formative assessment happens during the whole process of learning. So the timing is different, and also the purpose is kind of different as well. So we do summative assessment to evaluate the students what they have learned. But for formative assessment, we want to monitor the process of students learning and provide instructional feedback during the process to help the students to catch up or get on board with what they've learned. So it's kind of different purpose of these two assessment.
All right. So where does testing come within that then? So John mentioned it being a product being covered by assessment, right? Where would you put that in? I know it's difficult sometimes to define these. I think it's easy to define summative and formative, and you did a great job there. But then when we think about this word testing, what does that actually mean?
Test is like one way to assess, and it gives you a score, and like it provides a data to record and document students learning performance at the end. Yeah, so this is like one way of formal assessment, but also we have informal ones, and we have like ongoing ones. We need to incorporate a variety of ways to assess students' performance to provide a holistic view of students' learning performance.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. I think the way that I always thought about it when I was studying this in my master's was to look at evaluation as being the umbrella. Now, I know me and John have had a chat about this before on a different format, and we kind of not agree to disagree, but I think we both agree with each other. And I think that's what's nice about this, is that you can do that. But evaluation for me is the umbrella term. And then within that, we've got assessment. And then under that, we've got summative, formative. And then within those is the testing and the tools and the products that we have from that. So I think that's kind of how I look at it. But we've all got different ideas, I'm sure, and that's what's great. That's fine. And we might not have the answers. And again, that's what these discussions are about. They're not about giving the whole answers. It's about talking and looking and exploring and finding other avenues to go down. So we've talked a bit about different types of assessment in terms of the summative, so the end of the period of study, and then the formative throughout a period of study. Let's now have a look at other areas. So there's two areas that I'd like to look at, which is formal versus informal. And is one better than the other? So maybe if you could start by just giving a brief example of what you mean by a formal or informal test, and then telling us which one you prefer, or both. So maybe Super, you can kick off with this one.
So formal assessment usually is a standardized exam, for example, or test that measures students like learning objectives, skills, knowledge. So it usually happens like students will take one standardized format of assessment. But informal assessment usually is based on classroom performance, like classroom tasks, classroom like projects, the students work together, or it's just like a simple like a speaking task in the classrooms. Teachers can observe and evaluate and make comments on the students' performance. So it's more like informally based on classroom activities. What about John?
Okay.
Do you agree? Do you have other opinions?
Yeah, let me, if I take formative assessment and then maybe some examples of some formal formative assessment and then some informal formative assessment, hopefully that will make things clear as well. So for formative assessment, sort of ongoing assessment, I guess the formal would include like little mini tests or quizzes, for example, during a lesson, for example. Mm-hmm. And, you know, teachers in the chat box, you can disagree with me if you want, if you have a different definition. But I think also formative assessment can be very informal, right? And this is what I love. And this is what is so great about face-to-face teaching, and what many of us are missing at the moment, right, is being able to see the students' reactions to work they're doing, their body language, their faces, the comments they make, what they talk about when they're doing group work, or just kind of informal chats as you come into class or leaving class. You can actually gather so much informal kind of information that way. I've got a question back to you for both of you. So we'll also move on a little bit later and maybe talk about things like self and peer assessment. And I was thinking whether these are formal or informal, and that was quite a good bit of research. And I don't know whether we want to address that now or come back to that a bit later. I'll leave that one up to you, Dale.
Let's come back to that, because what I'd like to just pick on there was what you've just said about the ability to test, or the ability to assess is easier when you're face to face, because you have much more opportunity to see that. And we have a comment from the chat from Joseph, who's in Thailand at Darumpat School. He's talking specifically about the online learning situation we're facing. And I think we were talking actually just before the chat, before coming live, about that's probably a whole area in itself, isn't it? To look at how we assess online. And I think, it's something that we definitely need to look at, because things aren't going to go away from teaching online. So that's a very good comment. So thanks for bringing that up, John, and thanks for bringing that up, Joseph, as well.
Can I ask one more? Can I ask kind of one more thing as well? And
sure.
the word that comes up, and it's coming more and more, I think, into kind of modern course books, and it's not a new thing, but portfolios as well, when we're talking about maybe formal, informal, and where that kind of sits. And I think if used really effectively, they can be great. They can be a great tool as well for assessment. And I was thinking if they were informal or formal as well. I kind of think they can be little bit of both, actually.
Yeah. I think, like, as I mentioned, there is like no one approach to fit for all students. So we need to incorporate a variety of tools. I think portfolio is a good way to incorporate a variety of assessment tools. So we can include like a formal assessment like tests, results, or scores in the portfolio, but at the same time, we can include more evidence collected in like non-threatening like conditions, like the informal assessment can be included on the portfolio, to provide a better view of the students' learning.
Do you think? Sorry. Actually, Dale, can I ask you a quick question? Sorry to butt in, because I know you're into this as well. And would you say portfolios are a more valid and reliable way of assessing than, for example, a kind of a summative kind of test at the end of the year? Can they be valid and reliable?
I not only think they're more valid, I think they're fairer. It's a fairer way of assessing. I think, and I've mentioned this before in other conversations, I think that students should be assessed on where they started and where they end. So often we assess students at the end of a period of study, but we don't look at where they are when they first started that period of study. So we're measuring them all the same when we know they're not the same. And we talk about differentiation in classes, but we never talk about differentiation when it comes to assessment. And I think by using portfolios and formative assessment, we can actually include differentiation and therefore make it fairer. There's a really good picture which I had it with me now, and it's somebody sat behind a desk and there's a lot of animals stood in front of the desk, and the teacher behind the desk says, right, I'm not going to now assess you on your ability. They've all studied a period of time. So now I'm going to assess you on your ability to climb a tree. And there's a fish there, and there's a monkey there, and there's an elephant. And obviously there's only one person who can climb the tree. I'm not doing it justice, but if you look online at this assessment and animals, you might be able to find it. It's very clear that summative assessment maybe isn't a fairer choice as formative. Anyway,
can I show? There's an amazing article I was reading as well called "Assessment Matters" about portfolios, and this one you can find on One Stop English. It's a brilliant one of our brilliant websites, and that talks about how to organize and maintain a portfolio. It's really nice to help you organize it, maybe to make it more formal, actually, which is great. So check that one out if you're interested in portfolios. I think they're really good for online learning as well. Gives you a nice tool, I think, for online teachers. Yeah.
Actually, I've just found it now. So let's do it justice. It's there. Can you see it?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of making the point that not everybody is the same. And I really like this analogy. Anyway, so let's move on to the final question that we have before we look at any Q&A. And it's been mentioned in the chat box. We're talking about, somebody mentioned, here we go. Kwang Nat Win, sorry about the pronunciation of your name. But for example, talking about proficiency tests. And let's look at this question. So what other types of assessment are there? So we've looked at that. Well, maybe somebody like to define proficiency test and then tell us about some other kinds of tests that are available. John, you can go first this time.
Yeah, well, maybe assessment, actually, in terms of, I mean, obviously sort of tests do sort of fall under that and are one kind of tool. So you have kind of, most publishers now will have like a testing or assessment suite, right? It will come with midterm, end of term. You might have diagnostic placement tests as well, which are all a little bit different. But yeah, to be honest, I'm not going to jump in and define all those terms now. I think people can go away and Google those. But I think in terms of other types of assessment, I would love to spend a little bit of time on things like self-assessment, peer assessment, that their kind of effectiveness. And we're seeing them more and more, aren't we, in kind of modern day course books now. And I wonder how effective they are as well, self-assessment, peer assessment, and who are they effective with? Can very young learners do self-assessment? I reckon, Super, you may be a little bit of an expert on that, actually. You're into your pre-primary, and maybe you can help me with that one.
Yes. So we all know that there are limitations of like tests or exams. We want to have more like varieties in the way we test or assess our student. So for pre-primary students, a lot of teachers ask about how to assess very young learners. So basically we know doing tests for very young learners are very difficult, right? So we have different ways to assess. For example, like we have a pre-primary product called Ferris wheel. There is an evaluation pack that includes different ways and like tools to assess students. For example, we want the students to be more active in assessment themselves. So we will have a self-evaluation, like a sheet for them to draw a smiley face or a frown, or using stickers like stars or like animals to evaluate themselves about what they've learned in each unit, and also evaluate how they work well with their classmates, how well they like work in groups, stuff like that. And also at the same time, teachers will have an observation sheet to like tick boxes of students like performance. So these two like assessment will be combined together in a student like a school report to be sent to the parents or recorded as like a data for the students' learning progress.
I love the fact that now we are maybe assessing not only skills, right? We're still assessing skills, traditional skills, but also now we're kind of assessing even like 21st century skills, right? Group work and how well they work together, their socio-emotional skills, right? How well they cooperate in the classroom and things like that. But with that, that's quite tough. There's a lot for teachers, isn't it? And I guess if we're shifting this way, there's a lot of teachers who have different beliefs, aren't they, in the way, you know, students should be assessed. And I guess for me, there's quite a lot of unlearning, right? Unlearning first, and then sort of relearning all these kind of new areas as well. Which is fascinating as well. Yeah.
I think it's useful, but I probably think it's more useful for teenagers to do and for young adults and obviously adult students, because I think when you go into the workforce, when you have evaluations yourself in the workforce, you're often expected to evaluate your own performance before, say, your manager or your team leader evaluates your performance. So this goes through all the way through from if you learn to do this well as a child, you're more likely to then, it's kind of a 21st century skill, isn't it? Being able to self-reflect and evaluate yourself. I think it's a good tool to use. And I haven't really thought about that until today when I have to write up my mid-year review. So, yeah.
Yeah. But I think in general, yeah, we see, you know, assessment is becoming more progressive, right? There seem to be kind of more options now. Maybe it's starting to match more kind of, I mean, learning has become more individual, isn't it? I think, and we're understanding more about that. And I think assessment is slowly moving to reflect that as well. But it takes time, doesn't it? Especially within government systems, if you have a, you know, a set way of kind of testing. And
I do looking at that point though of building those 21st century schools. I love the way that the course books now, particularly ours nowadays, are not just teaching English. They are teaching really valuable skills that I was doing a session yesterday on visible thinking routines and putting yourself in the shoes of other people and learning empathy through English and stuff. It's really, really wonderful stuff what's going on. I think students nowadays have a lot of challenges, but there are a lot of tools out there to help them.
There was a brilliant question. Sorry, there was a brilliant question actually from Myanmar, from Manipur University, Zinmei So. Apologies for pronunciation. And she says, how to like assess, how do you assess these kind of skills that you mentioned, like these global skills and 21st century skills, even cultural awareness? It's quite tricky, isn't it? And where to start with that? Which is a fascinating area. And like Del was saying, and yeah, I guess Super, you were talking about kind of having like checklists, and we talked about maybe can-do statements, and someone in the chat group mentioned goals, having like setting goals and making maybe these goals clear at the start of the unit. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And involve students in the process of assessment is also a good way to motivate them to let them become more self-directed, monitoring, and also regularly. So they will take a more active role in the process of learning and in terms of assessment as well. This is a way to, I think, better assess their learning and also better planning their learning as well.
Yeah, lots of questions coming in about online assessment as well, and I think we've got Daisy, who's going to post or send out lots of links to other webinars and blogs and articles about how you can assess online effectively as well. Who's the guy? There's a guy called Russell, isn't there? Russell Stannard.
Stannard, yeah.
He's brilliant, isn't he? And he talks a lot about, using, formative ways online, Google Forms for creating little surveys, quizzes, comprehension questions, true false questions, more individualized assessment when you're doing online teaching. And we'll send out lots of links for those as well. What are those online boards, Del? You're very good with these things. There's like online boards you can use to kind of like share ideas or share your learning on your project work.
I think they're being used quite well. In fact, I was really surprised yesterday. I have a 15-year-old daughter who's studying online at the moment in Thailand, and she was messing around with some glasses and doing some kind of experiment, and it was really cool to see. And then she had to take a video of what she was doing, and she posted it to Padlet. And I was really surprised that they were using, these tools that we mentioned. There we go, Padlet.com. You just mentioned it. Yeah. So there are lots of tools out there. I think they take a little bit of time to get to know, but I mean, if you're teaching teenagers, for example, they're gonna know how to use it more effectively than you in a very short space of time, depending on your ability to use technology well. Certainly, my daughter would know more about Padlet than I do. I'm very sure, because they just have that knack. So there's loads of online tools out there. But yes, Russell Stannard. I'll put his name in the chat.
Yeah. There was a brilliant question as well, while we're on this kind of online learning and teaching and assessment, and there's a brilliant couple of questions. One from Teresa in Chonburi, not far from you, Del.
Yeah.
And one from Jagdish, who's from Bukit Bintang School. I know that one very well, in Kuala Lumpur. They were talking about assessment in online teaching and learning. Is it fair? Is it fair when you do sort of online assessment? And I guess if you have the right platform and if you're using a good course, which comes with all these online workbooks, which is all managed in one place and automatically marks everything and sends that to the teacher, then probably yes. But you can cheat a lot, can't you, when you're doing online learning and your teacher's not there to look at you? How do you get over that? All these questions. There's so many big questions, but so little time.
I think maybe a good session to do would have to maybe have a panel of teachers who are actually who are using online assessment at the moment and seeing what their challenges are and how they go about doing it. There are systems, there are companies out there that are facilitating online assessment in a way that is deemed to be it stops cheating, basically. But I'm not really sure how they go about doing that. I need to do a bit more research into it myself.
Yeah, and again, as mentioned, we've got loads of great webinars and Q&A, recorded sessions, and maybe Daisy will post. There was a good one on assessment done by one of our other team members in Brazil, who did a brilliant Q&A about assessment and the future of assessment. So I think we'll send you a link to that as well. And that's brilliant to watch and review if you want to learn and go a bit deeper.
All right. Well, we've gone over time. I hope we haven't kept anybody from their lunch or from their the rest of their day. But I just want to say thank you to everybody for attending. He's been John.
She's been Super.
He's been Del.
Thanks for stopping by, Asia.
Stay classy, Asia.
Have a super day.
And just before we go, I should say, keep in touch. And for any further sessions, if you've got any ideas that you want to talk about or you want us to talk about, then do let us know on the usual links. So thanks very much, everybody. Take care.
See you. Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.